Hey class, welcome back. Once again, we're spending about 5 to 10, 15 minutes on Sunday mornings learning hieroglyphics here on Doodling with Purpose, the internet's only week-by-week lessons, learning ancient Middle Kingdom Egyptian. All right, well, you're in class, so let's jump in. We had some homework last week, which hopefully this time I didn't actually make any spelling mistakes on. I know, I'm a terrible teacher. If I do that, it doesn't exactly make it easy on you guys. All right, but I think we're good to go here. And we've incorporated some words and concepts from the first half of the class, the first 100 episodes, which if you've jumped on board in the 100th episode or, after that, some of these may not be as familiar. The first thing we're going to do, like with any translation, is transliterate it. So putting all of the letter sounds. And I have left out the actual letter pronunciation guide here. But going forward, that's going to be a requirement. So for every letter, we're going to also put the dashes or lines. Now that first word there, mer with the N and the person, if you recall from the first half of the class, that is the verb to love, but it's written in the past tense. MR means to love, and then MR plus the water sign there under the R is like adding an ED to any verb. So when you see an N at the end of a verb, it makes the verb past tense. So it goes from love to loved. And then following that is your pronoun. So in this case, the pronoun for I, which is a person sitting. So this makes it I loved. So you have mer plus N plus pronoun is how you get from love to loved. All right, so we've got our first word. So I loved. Then, as we can continue the translation, we have words from last week. So you probably remember AB plus B plus W with the determinative for a pachyderm is going to be the word for elephant. Usually anytime you have an animal at the end, it makes it much easier to understand. All right, so we have I loved, and then the word elephant. Because in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs there are no articles as well as sometimes connecting words, this can be translated therefore as I loved an elephant, the elephant. Now it is singular. In order to make elephant plural, we would put 3 strokes under the elephant, and this means we're talking about multiple elephants. So it could be I loved elephants, or many elephants, or all of the elephants. But without those 3 strokes, it's just elephant. It's followed by the shoulders shrugging, which is N in parentheses, because it's not N like the water sign, but rather the negative N. And when you see the shoulders shrugging, it is a negative aspect of the sentence structure. So it becomes, I loved an elephant, and then instead of just the word not, you're going to probably put but not. Again, there's no Egyptian word for but not, but the way it flows in English, it's easier to sort of anglicize what we're looking at in order to read it correctly. So we have, I loved an elephant, but not ivory. So hey, a very kind person here. He loves his elephant, but he does not love ivory, like when people take the tusks away from an elephant. Okay, trying to just incorporate the vocabulary, but again, a reminder of how past tense verbs work, as well as adding a negative into the sentence. So last week we started looking at the bilateral sounds, glyphs that have 2 consonant sounds. And I know A is traditionally a vowel, but in Egyptian it's considered a consonant sound. And in this case, the A with the sound helper with the comma is father, ah. Here we have our next bilateral sound. This is the stork, if you will. And it's going to make, let's just look quickly reviewing how to draw it. Like all of the standing birds, you're going to start with the body, doing the top of the body and then the underbelly. Once you have that oval shape, the head is really what differentiates each bird from the next. So in the case of the stork here, you're going to draw a candy cane up, and then a straight parallel line across cutting through the candy cane, and then the back of the head becomes stroke number 5. So the back crest then also connects to the top, and then the end of the candy cane is the beak. Of course, we'll want to give our stork something to stand on and pay special attention to this bird because it has a bent front leg. Otherwise, a lot of the legs are just straight. All right, so that's our stork, and again, you can go back to the first half of the class for an in-depth video on drawing it. That's just the drawing map for the stroke marks. And this is going to be A, like father, and then H, like Bach, the sound for H, which is indicated by the little smile dash under it. So the comma makes the A, like father, and the smile mark makes the H, ch. So that would make this sound, ach, ach. So it's two consonants, the and the put together. So again, those sound markings are now going to become crucial to being able to transliterate and actually speak correctly and pronounce things. All right, so here is a word using our newly learned sound. So we have aha and then ha, with a man sitting on a throne there. So obviously that is the determinative. Anything at the end that's a more complicated glyph, especially a glyph of a person or an animal, then you know immediately it's a determinative and you can label it as such. And because we have the h sound of the placenta that is immediately following the double consonant sound of the stork, well, we can eliminate that sound. It's an echo sound or a reflection sound, as I've been calling it. I've marked it here with those little blue sound waves, showing that the sound of the previous consonant reflects the final sound of the double consonant before it. It's just there to help remind you of what you're saying. It's one of the tricks that makes hieroglyphics easy. So you would pronounce this ah without an extra h, because that second letter doesn't actually need to be pronounced. It's just there to jog your memory that the first glyph is a double consonant sound. So this is the word for ghost. Obviously, because the man sitting in the chair is clearly a ghostbuster with his proton pack under him, and what he's holding in his hand clearly is a proton wand, right, used to bust ghosts. I don't know if it's Bill Murray or if it's Harold Ramis there, but obviously the ancient Egyptians were very, very into 1980s pop culture, and that's why they have a ghostbuster as the determinative for a ghost. Okay, it's not actually a ghostbuster. It's a guy sitting in a chair. If it was a ghostbuster, it would probably be more direct and would look like this. So, okay, we try, but it doesn't always work out. Now, there, of course, is a second way of drawing ghost without using the stork. That is done like this. You're going to start with the N, with the Bart Simpson, up, down, up, down, up, down. And then, of course, we'll do a big loop to the top, add 2 circles, and then a squiggle for the mouth. And that is the other way that the ancient Egyptians would write ghost. And, of course, you can, give them a little sound balloon there. So there you go, ancient Egyptian determinative for ghost. Okay, I'm totally kidding. This is not a determinative for a ghost. But hey, it could have been. Now, the stork is used for different words that have to do with spirits and the afterlife. So in this case, and every time you see the stork in a word, it's probably a word that is somehow related to moving from one plane of existence to the other, from life to death, because it was a very important part of Egyptian culture. So once again, we have ah followed by a h sound. So you have, again, a reflection. You'll see this a lot, and it's done to help Egyptians read their own language. So they didn't have to memorize all, 500 glyphs. They just know that, oh, if it's a repeat, then we know that it is just reminding us the first glyph is a 2-consonant bilateral sound. The determinative at the end of this sentence, which is something we covered in the first half of the glyph, it's a very important determinative. What you're looking at is a roll of papyrus. It's done with either a square or kind of an elongated oval. And it's an interesting glyph and an interesting determinative because, one, it can be drawn both vertically or horizontally. This is done for space saving, essentially, if you have to have it in rock. And this determinative essentially means something intangible. So a feeling or something that really can't be seen physically. So the word here, as I noted, anytime you see the stork, it usually means something related to the afterlife. Here the word is to become a spirit. So not a ghost or spirit itself, but the verb of actually turning into a ghost, if you will. All right. The next glyph that we're going to look at is another bilateral and a very interesting one because it's got a double A. So the first sound it makes is ah, like father, but then is like palm, and then the second one is ah, like father. Now, I know those sound very close to each other in English, palm, father, but in Egyptian, there were much more intricacies into pronunciation. So sounds that we have in English aren't always reflective of the way they worked in ancient Egyptian. So here we have the column, which here is shown horizontally, much like the papyrus. It's a symbol that can go up and down or left and right. So we have ah, followed by ah. I know I'm doing a really bad job of saying them and making them sound different, but what can I say? I'm an English speaker, not an ancient Egyptian. So again, we have that reflection, the second letter, reminding us that the first glyph is a double consonant sound. So you can remove the second glyph, that of the vulture there, which is just the ah sound, like in father. So palm and father together make it sort of like I. It's, like I said, it's tough to actually even vocalize that as an English speaker. This is the word for great. Again, we have the determinative of the papyrus roll behind it, which is an intangible thing. Something being great is not something you could just draw. So a papyrus roll represents that. All right, see if you can figure out this one without even translating it, just based on this here, the determinative. Well, if I've done a good job of drawing it, you'll know what it is. If I've done a terrible job, you might be like, I don't know, is that some kind of like space horse? Okay, it's a donkey. Can you get that it's a donkey? Did I do a good job at the ears? I know, it's a little tricky. I'm not exactly Picasso. But again, once you learn how to draw the basic four-legged animal, it just changes with the shape of the head, the ears, and the underbelly. Otherwise, everything is pretty much the same. So here again, we have ah, and that's followed by a second glyph, which is, in this case, a determinative. Now, the phallus is pronounced MT, so it might be instinctive to pronounce as amt, but in this case, both the phallus and the donkey are acting as determinatives. How do you know this? You just do. It's kind of like I after E except after C. All right, so here is your homework for this week. Write this down, transliterate it, and when you do so, make all of the different sound marks as well. Your commas, your smiley marks, your dashes. It's going to help in the long run if you're doing this every single time, and I'm going to start incorporating this now starting next week, where every time we transliterate, we also put these sound indicator marks. Hey, if you like this series, please stay in the class, but also share it with others. Let people know what you think of it. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. It helps tell YouTube to continue to share it with other people as a suggestion. I always appreciate everyone being in class. Any questions, leave them below, and I'll make sure to answer, because I want to clarify any questions you have as we continue our quest to learn ancient Egyptian by doodling with purpose. See you next week.